Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I am going to be doing a review of Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. Now this was an e-arc. I got this from Netgalley, so thank you Netgalley for approving me for the e-arc. The more popular authors tend to get more requests naturally, so I didn't really expect to get it, but I got it and I thought, okay, I've been reading a lot of fantasy, I've been reading a lot of like heavy thematic work, so let's go with Love Theoretically as my next book. Now this book is, on the surface, essentially a combination of book 1 and 2, and I was a little bit wary going into it because my experience with book 2 was really bad. I think I gave it like a 2 or a 2.5 stars. I really enjoyed book 1. I thought the writing was pretty solid. I really liked the way that the story was paced. I quite enjoyed some of the characters, and it kind of hit the notes as a kind of romance goes. But the second one just completely fell flat. I just didn't like it. I didn't enjoy anything about it. I hated the characters. I hated the plot. I hated the way that the story developed. I just really did not like it. So I came into this one with pretty low expectations. Now, as I started the book, I was very scared because the book essentially set up what we're going to expect for the next kind of 400 pages. And as it was being set up, like I said before, it was kind of like a combination of book 1 and book 2. I had this feeling that we were going to get this rehash of things that we've already seen, which I was not here for. But as the book progressed, after I would say about 100 pages, the book started to take a different turn. I liked the way that it went. I quite enjoyed the main character, Elsie. I thought at first she was kind of like your typical annoying, quirky female protagonist, but that's not the case. I think she actually had a bit of depth. I quite like the fact that in the book she has diabetes, type 1 diabetes. As someone who has a very close family member who has diabetes, it was quite refreshing to see that representation and to see it in quite an authentic way, and also not for it to be made her personality. Like, it was a feature in the story, but it didn't feel like that was all she was about, the fact that she had diabetes. So I think Hazelwood balanced it really well. She kind of struck the chords in the right way. I also quite enjoyed the love interest, John or Jack. He's referred to as both, but let's just go with Jack because that's how we first meet him. Hazelwood definitely has an archetype when it comes to male love interests. They tend to be described as having big hands, as being a hulking form, and the female protagonist is always described as small and petite. And I don't know, maybe it's a thing that she has. She likes the kind of height difference, and she likes the fact that, you know, one is very small and one is very big. I don't personally get it, but sure, if that's what rocks your boat, that's what rocks your boat. But she really does emphasize it a lot, and I think she overemphasizes it at some point, which is maybe one of the things that I didn't like. But I feel like if you've read Ali Hazelwood and you've kind of read, you know, all of her books that are out, you'll kind of be used to it, and you'll kind of just accept that that's going to be a feature of her books. I would be very pleasantly surprised though if she decided that in her next book it's going to be a tall woman or a small man. We all have our types and ways of doing things, so if that's what she wants to stick with, then fair play. But I did like Jack. I thought, aside from the kind of physical descriptions, like, I think he was quite an interesting character. I would have liked to have gone a little bit deeper into some of his past, which is ultimately what made him into the man that he is in the present day. But I liked it. Like, I enjoyed their interactions. I thought he was a little bit overbearing at times, but again, that's kind of one of his quirks. And, you know, I felt like the two of them worked quite well together. The only thing that I really didn't like was the kind of main conflict. With every romance story, especially with every Hazelwood book, there's always a conflict. There's always a challenge that arises, you know, halfway through the book. And the rest of the story is to kind of figure out how they resolve that and put their differences to the side. The conflict in this book just didn't make any sense. It was completely superficial. It was completely manufactured. It didn't make sense to the characters. And I just didn't understand why that was the conflict. I feel like if you were two mature adults, you would just sit down and talk it through. Just discuss, you know, why the thing was said or why the thing was done. But that just never happened. And I just felt like it was a bit meh. Like, this is not a real conflict. It's poor communication, ultimately. I mentioned that before on my channel, that the miscommunication trope is not it for me. And that was the kind of core conflict of this book. The beginning and the end were not great. The middle bit was the best bit. And I think it is one of those stories that it is worth it just for the middle bit, because I think the characters go on an interesting journey. I feel like a lot doesn't happen in this book, but because you're kind of with the characters and you're learning more about them and their past and why they've made certain decisions, that's all right. Like, it's quite a character-driven romance book if you take away that dumb conflict that doesn't even make sense. And I quite enjoy that, and I hope she does that more as she writes more books, because I think she's actually quite good at it. In terms of like whether you have to read the other books to get to this one, absolutely not. They're all standalones. I just kind of happened to read them in order. When I read The Love Hypothesis, that was the first one that was out, and then the second one came out and I read it, and now this one, I saw that there was an e-arc and I got it. And I just think that you should skip book 2. You should read number 1, read number 3, and then if you really want to, read number 2. But I thought that was garbage. And this one seems like it's back to true form for Ali Hazelwood. So I gave this book a 3.5 stars. I gave it like a soft 3.5. I've been thinking about it, and I think maybe it's like a borderline 3.5, 3.75, but I'm just gonna go with the 3.5 for now, because I rated book 2 2.5 and I rated book 1 4. So I feel like this one is kind of in the middle. And I think a 3.5 does it justice, and I think it's definitely worth a read. So nobody will have read this book, or like, unless you got approved for an e-arc. But if you have any questions about the book, let me know. I'm happy to answer them with minimal spoilers or no spoilers down below. I hope you enjoyed this review. Stay safe, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.